Who controls the internet? Do we know where most of our data is going? Or who is watching it on the other side? Or is it just some invisible force that we trust without question? Every text message, phone call, bank statement, and love letter travels through hidden pipelines, digital ones and zeros flowing through global infrastructure we rarely ever hear about. One very important man, sparsely known in the West, claims to be a humble pipe maker. His name is Ren Zhengfei. But Ren didn't just build pipes. He founded and built the largest telecommunications empire on Earth. A company so deep embedded in the world's digital bloodstream that it touched the lives of billions, and governments took notice. You've heard of companies like Qualcomm, AT&T, and Nokia, but there's one far more powerful, yet way less familiar. A company that has quietly taken over global networks, pioneered 5G, shaped smart cities, and helped build surveillance states. Its reach is vast, its history controversial, and its allegiance, well, that's where things get complicated. Its name is Huawei. You have probably never heard of Ren Zhengfei, but in China, he is a titan of industry, a war-forged businessman, a tech pioneer, and perhaps a loyal servant to the state. Ren grew up in the chaos of Mao's Cultural Revolution, a time when wrongthink against the party could get you not only imprisoned, but your entire family. His own father was sent to a labor camp. It was a brutal, paranoid environment, but it taught him discipline and survival, and he ended up surviving by staying quiet and learning. The learning took Ren to the military, where he became an engineer, a place where Ren sought refuge, in a time when China began experimenting with telecommunications and computers. While the West was dominating in the personal computer realm, Ren was inside Chinese military labs, learning how to build the systems that would carry the internet of tomorrow. As he aged, so did the Chinese government. They began to open up their economy in the 80s. Deng Xiaoping created the experiment of a special economic zone. Capitalism, once viewed as fatal to China, now operating in a communist state. The first economic zone was in Shenzhen, and it would be the testbed of the new Chinese Communist Party experiment. And Ren was one of the few chosen to participate in the experiment, and succeed he did. In 1987, Ren and 4 unknown investors launched Huawei. Their first goal was a humble one, not one they would expect to launch them into the stratosphere. They began creating telephone switches. Beyond this humble hardware was something far bigger, the beginning of the future of telecommunications. It worked. They built a switch that came to dominate China's rural market. Ren's so-called wolf mentality pushed Huawei employees to their human limits, working 16-hour days, sleeping in the office, military indoctrination, and he pushed until there was nothing left to push. Loyalty was everything. At one point during one of the fast-growing periods of Huawei history, it was said Ren sent out a letter to every salesperson with the 2 sentences, "Come to me with 2 things, your resignation letter and your performance report. All sign 1. He essentially made everyone reapply for their jobs. In the 2000s, reports of suicides and breakdowns inside Huawei had been a recurring problem. At least 6 confirmed employee deaths, and that's just the ones we know about. One reportedly wrote, "I'm going to leave this world. I cannot bear this company any longer." But all this growth and demand isn't without questions about its origins, its partners, its leadership, and most importantly, their ethics and who is really calling the shots. Their controversies stack and stack, so let's dive into them. As Huawei began to grow into the biggest telecom company in the world, its name started appearing everywhere, most importantly, in places no company ever wants to be. Court documents, classified intelligence reports, and the crosshairs of the US Justice Department. The concerns of Huawei participating in corporate espionage weren't just whispers or rumors. They have been accused of stealing trade secrets from some of the most influential names in the game over and over again. In the early 2000s, Huawei was sued by the massive US-based company Cisco for directly copying its router code. Now, I'm not talking about similar features, but line-for-line duplication, all the way down to the bugs. Bugs that made it all the way into Huawei's firmware. You don't just accidentally copy someone's typo. As the case progressed, it mysteriously fell apart. Huawei didn't slow down, they pivoted. It struck a deal with Cisco's rival, 3Com, giving Huawei access to a massive portfolio of patents. Was it a legal workaround? Technically. Was it ethnically clean? Hard to say, but the stench of IP theft never exactly went away for them. The CFO of Huawei, Meng Wanzhou, who also happens to be Ren Zhengfei's daughter, was arrested in Canada at the request of the US government. Bank fraud was the charge. She was caught lying to HSBC about Huawei's relationship with an Iranian shell company called Skycom to skirt US sanctions. The evidence was a PowerPoint. Seriously. Prosecutors used one slide to show that Huawei was secretly controlling Skycom to do business in Iran, all while telling the banks straight to their face that they were not. That one meeting with HSBC, with Meng calmly presenting her case in a Hong Kong boardroom, turned into an international incident. Canada arrested her as she stepped off her plane into Vancouver. China retaliated, and they retaliated hard. They basically kidnapped 2 Canadian citizens on sketchy, seemingly made-up charges. The world called it a hostage diplomacy, all of it because of Huawei. But it doesn't end there. Huawei didn't just build telecom towers and phones, it built entire surveillance ecosystems. Safe cities, as they would be coined. They were smart monitoring networks sold to governments as a way to reduce crime and increase security. The age-old saying of, for your protection. Surely they would never abuse the power for foul play. But as governments around the world so often do, they lied. Many of these safe cities turned into tools of oppression, especially in Western China, Xinjiang, where the Chinese government is accused of running mass internment camps for Uyghur Muslims. Huawei's technology is the backbone of that system. Facial recognition, cameras, license plate readers, phone tracking software, all integrated into real-time monitoring centers. They even had systems that reportedly triggered alerts based off of ethnicity. They created a monster, a surveillance state that could watch millions of people simultaneously. And this monster wasn't contained to China. It was sold all around the world. Pakistan, Uganda, Serbia, even sent to North Korea. Countries that could barely afford it were suddenly modernizing their cities with Chinese surveillance gear. You don't need a back door if you already have a key to the front door. Think about it. Huawei wasn't hacking anyone. They are managing the networks directly. They survive as the de facto IT departments for authoritarian governments. It begs the question, though, what were they seeing? As pressure mounted, intelligence agencies across the globe warned that Huawei is too close to the Chinese Communist Party, and by 2018, the US, Australia, and several other allies started to ban Huawei equipment. The fear was that in a future conflict, China would need to launch cyber attacks. They already own the switches, the cables, and the technology required. They could turn them all off. Or on. And through it all, Meng was promoted. Despite the scandal, despite the charges, despite the political firestorm, she returned to China as a hero and a chairperson of Huawei. Corporate espionage, IP theft, international bank fraud, human rights violations, surveillance system used by dictators, you know, the standard things for a simple pipe maker. You can't talk about Huawei without talking about the party. That's not Western paranoia, it's policy. By Chinese law, any company operating at a certain scale must have a Communist Party committee inside. Huawei is no exception. In fact, at one point, over 30,000 of its 140,000 employees were registered CCP members. That's nearly a quarter. Some departments of the company were even run like a CCP branch. Huawei made sure that this was not common knowledge. Publicly, they even claimed they are independent, but it's impossible to ignore the fingerprints. Huawei had a chairwoman named Sun Yafeng for an extended period of time. Her resume includes a stint at the Ministry of State Security, China's main intelligence agency, on par with agencies such as the CIA, the MI6, and the Mossad. This fact was scrubbed from her public bio once people found out about her history. Her rise at Huawei wasn't just about business. Many believed it was orchestrated, that she was placed there, groomed for the role even. Then there is Ren Zhengfei himself. Sure, he's a former People's Liberation Army engineer, that part is already known. But it's not just his military background that raises eyebrows, it's who he keeps close. Huawei employees have been caught describing their inner circle like a shadow military command. Internally, the CCP had growing influence. In 2007, the CCP secured veto power over Huawei executive appointments. This is not a rumor. This is proven. This means that major business decisions could be influenced, determined, or even blocked by the government. They were not just cozy with the state, they might even be a branch of the state. There is certainly enough evidence to believe this. Huawei's deep involvement in building China's surveillance grid, called Sharp Eyes. The goal of this oppressive technology was to cover 100% of all public spaces with state-sponsored surveillance by 2020. Huawei built this technology. Its thermal imaging systems, its smart city integrations, all feeding into centralized command rooms, often run in tandem with local CCP officials. Huawei exported this tech too, meaning China had direct access to foreign adversaries' surveillance data. 24/7, they can monitor things like social media posts all the way to drone footage. So the question begs, what is Huawei really? A private company, a national champion, or just a global extension of Chinese state power? Ren has always downplayed it. As he once told the media, "We are a business, we build pipes." But when you build pipes, control the routers, manage the servers, write the code, you don't just carry the internet, you control it. And if CCP comes knocking on your door to turn the tap, do you really have the option to say no? So what happens when a tech giant gets cut off at its knees? In 2019, the US blacklisted Huawei. Huawei's supply chain took a huge hit. No more Google, no more Qualcomm, and no more access to the Western tech world. It hit them like a wall. Their phones couldn't run Android properly, their chips were gone, and countries like the UK, Canada, and Australia followed the US lead and banned Huawei gear from their infrastructure. Huawei, once aiming to take over the world, was now in full-blown damage control. Ren Zhengfei, normally stoic and quiet, held press conferences. He opened up Huawei's doors to journalists, inviting them into their state-of-the-art R&D center, trying to impress so the people would relent. He sued governments, he tried charm, logic, even desperation, and nothing was working. Universities that once partnered with Huawei, Oxford, Stanford, Berkeley, all backed out. Huawei's phone business collapsed, having to sell it just for them to survive. And yet, against all odds, they did. They did survive. They built their own operating system, they leaned harder into cloud and surveillance, and they started making their own chips despite restrictions. Inside China, they were still a champion, but in the West, a cautionary tale. Meng Wanzhou returned to China in 2021 after a prisoner swap and got promoted. A chairperson now, like nothing ever happened. Huawei didn't go away. They adapted. Smaller, quieter, yet still very dangerous. Because this isn't just the story of a company, it's about who controls the digital rails that we ride on. And Huawei, despite it all, still controlled a lot of rails. Ren once said he just builds pipes. But in a world of surveillance, infrastructure, and geopolitics, the person who builds the pipes controls the water.